The year was 2067. Earth had long stood as a backwater planet, overlooked by the universe's most powerful empires. Its technology, though rapidly advancing, was still far behind the galactic giants who ruled the stars. No one had anticipated that such a humble world would soon be thrust into a conflict that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy. It started with a crack in the sky. The first alien fleet arrived unexpectedly, descending from the far reaches of space. The attackers were the Zeral, an ancient and aggressive race of extraterrestrials known for their ruthless conquest of planets. Their armada consisted of thousands of ships, each one larger and more powerful than any Earth military vessel. The Zeral's reputation for obliterating entire civilizations preceded them. No planet had ever resisted their overwhelming forces. When the first wave of ships appeared above Earth's atmosphere, it was as if the universe had declared war on the human race. The alien ships released waves of smaller, heavily armed fighters that rapidly encircled major cities. Earth's most advanced military forces, including the newly formed Global Defense Command, were ill-prepared for such a sudden and ferocious attack. For the first time in history, humankind found itself utterly defenseless against a foreign enemy. The Zeral made their demands clear: humanity would surrender its world or face total annihilation. They sent emissaries with their ultimatum, confident that their sheer might would break any resistance. The alien ambassadors, towering and imposing, were met with a mix of fear and defiance from Earth's leaders. The humans, though outgunned and overwhelmed, refused to bend the knee. A wave of panic swept across the globe, but amidst the chaos, something remarkable happened. A group of Earth's finest soldiers, drawn from every corner of the world, stood together in defiance. They were not the elite generals or seasoned officers that the alien invaders expected. No, these were ordinary humans, soldiers, scientists, engineers, and civilians, who were determined to protect their home. Among them was Captain Thomas Hayes, a decorated war hero with a reputation for thinking outside the box. Hayes, like many others, had no illusions about the strength of the Zeral Empire. But he also understood the one thing that made humanity unique: their unyielding will to survive. With little more than sheer grit and innovation, Hayes knew they could fight back. As Earth cities burned under the alien bombardment, Hayes and his team worked quickly to form a resistance. They began gathering forces, developing new technologies using salvaged alien tech, and training ordinary civilians to fight in ways they never thought possible. The Global Defense Command, despite its limited resources, rallied behind them. Soon, Earth's armies were no longer helpless. There was hope, however faint, that they might turn the tide. The Zeral underestimated humanity's resilience. They believed their technological superiority would be enough to crush the puny humans with ease. But what they did not understand was that Earth's warriors, fueled by the desperate need to protect their families and their home, were capable of things the aliens could not comprehend. In the underground bunkers, makeshift weapon factories churned out innovative new weapons, cloaking devices, anti-shield cannons, and pulse lasers. Human ingenuity was quickly closing the gap between Earth's primitive technology and the deadly alien machines. The resistance forces were small at first, but as their victories grew, so did their numbers. Soldiers from every nation, from every background, joined the fight. The human spirit of unity, born from the shared struggle to survive, became their most powerful weapon. As the first skirmishes unfolded, it was clear that Earth's warriors were not like the other civilizations the Zeral had conquered. They fought with a ferocity that surprised the invaders, even if their numbers were still outmatched. The odds were still overwhelming, but Earth's warriors had one advantage the Zeral could not predict: the power of their defiance. Earth may have been small, but it had something no other planet in the galaxy had: its people's will to fight for their home. Captain Hayes, standing at the helm of the newly assembled human fleet, looked up at the stars with a single thought in his mind: humanity would not go down without a fight. They had already defied the odds. And they were just getting started. As the first few battles between Earth's resistance forces and the Zeral Armada raged on, the scope of humanity's struggle became clear. The Zeral's weapons were devastating, their ships nearly indestructible, and their technology light years ahead of anything Earth had ever seen. But Earth's warriors, though outmatched, fought with a desperation born of necessity. Each skirmish, no matter how small, became a victory of human ingenuity and determination. Captain Thomas Hayes stood at the command center of the newly forged Human Alliance fleet, surveying the holographic map of Earth and the surrounding space. It was a somber sight. Zeril ships loomed over the planet, systematically annihilating cities and military bases. But amidst the carnage, there were signs of hope. The resistance was proving to be more resilient than anyone could have predicted. In the early days of the war, Earth's forces had been utterly disorganized, struggling to unite against a common enemy. But the sheer willpower of ordinary men and women, fighters and engineers, teachers and doctors, had brought them together. Against all expectations, they formed an effective fighting force, able to outmaneuver and outsmart their alien oppressors. The key to their early successes lay in their adaptability. Unlike the Zeril, whose tactics were rigid and built on sheer force, humanity relied on clever strategies and quick thinking. The Resistance's first major victory came when a small group of pilots, led by Colonel Sarah Carter, used an unexpected tactic to break through the Zeril's defenses. They lured the alien fighters into a trap using decoy drones, and then ambushed them with a mix of human-engineered EMP weapons and guerrilla tactics. The Zeril, unused to such unconventional strategies, were caught off guard, suffering heavy losses. That victory, though minor in comparison to the full scale of the war, was a turning point. It proved to Earth's warriors that they weren't completely powerless. They could strike back. But the Zeril were not ones to let such defiance go unpunished. In retaliation, they launched a devastating counterattack. A fleet of colossal warships descended upon Earth's orbit, their weapons charged and ready to wipe out humanity once and for all. The Resistance, now scattered and underfunded, had no choice but to prepare for their final stand. Captain Hayes, his mind racing with strategies and solutions, convened a war council in the underground command center. A handful of humanity's best and brightest were gathered around a holographic table, each one representing a different facet of the Alliance: generals, engineers, scientists, and strategists. The mood was grim, but Hayes refused to allow despair to take hold. "These ships," Hayes said, pointing to the hologram of the massive Zeril vessels, "are unstoppable, but they have a weakness. They rely on their central core to maintain their power. If we can get close enough, we can take out their power supply with a well-placed strike." The room fell silent as the assembled officers digested his words. It was a dangerous plan, perhaps even suicidal, but they had no choice. The Zeril were close to wiping out Earth's defenses entirely. Without this strike, humanity's resistance would be over. The plan was set into motion immediately. A team of Earth's best soldiers and engineers, including Colonel Sarah Carter and her elite squadron of pilots, was tasked with infiltrating one of the massive Zeril warships. Using newly developed cloaking devices and stealth technology, they would approach the alien vessel undetected and plant an explosive charge at its core. As the mission approached, Hayes felt the weight of responsibility pressing heavily on his shoulders. The loss of so many of Earth's finest was almost a certainty. But he knew it was the only option. If they failed, Earth would be lost forever. The Resistance's morale was fragile, and the Zeril would surely crush any remaining hope. Colonel Carter's team prepared for the mission. They had trained for months, developing a bond forged in the fires of battle. They were Earth's best and brightest, yet they were still only human, fighting against an overwhelming force. But despite the odds, there was no doubt in their minds: this was their world, and they would defend it at all costs. As the clock ticked down to 0, Captain Hayes gathered his forces one last time. "Whatever happens," he said, "we fight for our families. We fight for Earth. And we fight because we are human. Never forget that." With that, the final assault began. The battle for humanity's survival had entered its most critical phase. The Zeril had underestimated Earth's warriors. But what they did not understand was that humanity's greatest strength was its refusal to surrender. The rise of Earth's warriors was no longer just a fight for survival, it was a fight for the very future of the galaxy. Colonel Sarah Carter's team, armed with the latest stealth technology, descended upon the Zero warship with breathtaking precision. The massive ship loomed in the distance, a monolithic fortress in space, brimming with alien firepower and technology that humans could barely comprehend. Every moment felt like an eternity. The fate of Earth hung in the balance. Their ship, the Argonaut, was a sleek, stealth-equipped fighter that could blend into the dark void of space. Its crew consisted of seasoned warriors, pilots, engineers, and demolitions experts, each of them having sacrificed more than most could fathom. Yet, none of them were certain that they would return from this mission. Every one of them knew the gravity of their task: infiltrate the Zero warship and destroy its power core, the key to bringing down the entire fleet. Inside the Argonaut, Sarah Carter sat at the helm, her hands steady on the controls, her mind sharp. The mission was simple in theory: infiltrate, plant the explosive, and escape. But nothing was ever that simple when dealing with an enemy as ruthless and technologically advanced as the Zero. And with every passing minute, the stakes grew higher. The massive Zero ship came into full view, its sleek, metallic surface almost glowing against the backdrop of stars. Carter's breath caught in her throat as she realized the sheer size of the vessel. This wasn't just a warship, it was a city in space, capable of obliterating entire fleets. But it had a fatal flaw: its core was exposed, vulnerable, and the Resistance had discovered it. It was their one chance to take the fight to the Zero and make a real difference. Approaching the target, Carter's voice rang out, cutting through the tension in the cockpit. Engines off. Prepare for docking sequence. The crew went silent as they activated the cloaking devices, rendering their ship nearly invisible to the Zero's advanced detection systems. Carter's fingers moved deftly over the controls, guiding them toward the enemy warship. 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind, but her focus remained unshaken. She had led her team through impossible odds before, but this mission felt different. The consequences were more dire, the risk of failure more pronounced. The Argonaut glided closer to the Zero ship, its engines silent, its movements calculated. Every moment counted. The alien ships patrolled the area, unaware of the incoming threat. Carter's heart raced as they moved into position near the docking bay. She could see the metallic surface of the warship, littered with weapons arrays and defense turrets, but there was no time to waste. The mission had to be completed before the Zero discovered them. "Team, stay sharp," Carter said, her voice calm but filled with the urgency of the moment. "Once we're inside, we plant the charges, then we get out. Fast. No heroics." "Got it?" "Got it," came the replies from her team. Every soldier knew their role and was ready for what lay ahead. The Argonaut docked with the Zero warship, its magnetic clamps engaging with the cold metal surface. The crew quickly suited up, donning their advanced combat armor, designed to withstand the alien environment. They opened the hatch and stepped into the belly of the beast. The inside of the Zero ship was a labyrinth of metallic corridors and pulsating lights, alien writing carved into the walls. The ship's technology hummed around them, but there was no time to marvel at its complexity. They had a mission to complete, and failure was not an option. Carter led the way, her tactical instincts guiding them through the darkened halls. The ship was eerily quiet, and the team moved quickly, keeping a tight formation. Every shadow could hide an enemy. Every corner could be their last. As they neared the heart of the ship, they encountered their first obstacle: a squad of Zero soldiers, stationed near the main control center. The aliens were unlike anything human forces had ever encountered: tall, armored, and armed with energy weapons that could melt through steel. But Earth's soldiers had something the Zero did not: the element of surprise. Without hesitation, Carter gave the order, and her team sprang into action. The battle was brief but intense. The Zero soldiers fought with precision, but they were not prepared for the ferocity of Earth's warriors. Carter's squad moved with coordinated efficiency, taking down the aliens with a combination of close-quarters combat and rapid-fire weapons. The last Zero soldier fell with a resounding crash, and the team moved forward, adrenaline pumping. They had gained access to the core chamber, a massive, glowing structure at the center of the ship. This was it, the heart of the Zero war machine. Carter took a deep breath, her eyes narrowing. The countdown had begun. They had minutes to place the explosives and escape before the entire ship was set to self-destruct. "Charge set," said Sergeant Jack Hayes, the demolitions expert, his hands steady as he worked. Time to make history. But as they prepared to leave, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The Zeril had discovered the intruders. The countdown was no longer the only threat, their escape was now the most dangerous part of the mission. The battle for Earth's survival had reached its most perilous moment. The fate of the planet, and perhaps the galaxy, would be decided in the next few minutes. The countdown clock flickered to life on Sergeant Jack Hayes' wrist, just 30 minutes. The explosive charge was set, but the real battle was just beginning. The Zeril had discovered the intruders, and alarms were blaring throughout the ship. The echo of approaching footsteps reverberated in the corridors, signaling that their presence had been detected. There was no turning back now. The team had one objective: survive and escape the enemy stronghold before the bomb detonated. "Move!" Carter barked, her voice cutting through the tension. "We've got a half hour to get off this ship. Stay sharp." Her team followed without hesitation, their weapons raised, their minds focused on the mission. Their objective was clear: get back to the Argonaut and escape the Zeril warship before the destruction was unleashed. The Zeril might have superior technology, but they would soon learn that human ingenuity and tenacity would not be so easily defeated. The corridors of the warship were now alive with the sound of alien soldiers rushing to intercept them. Carter's team sprinted through the narrow passageways, weapons firing as they encountered resistance. The first wave of Zeril soldiers rounded the corner just as the team entered a larger, more open hall. The humans fired first, their rapid-fire blasters cutting down the aliens with terrifying efficiency. But the Zeril responded quickly, their own energy weapons blasting away chunks of the walls, causing the ship to shudder. "We're not going to make it through the front door," Carter said, analyzing their situation with laser focus. "Hayes, is there another way out?" Sergeant Hayes, never one to panic, nodded. "There's a secondary hatch on the port side. It's a risk, but it should lead us directly to the hangar bay. If we make it there, we can get to the Argonaut." Carter didn't hesitate. "Then that's our route. Let's move." The team changed direction, weaving through the darkened hallways. Every step felt like a countdown to their doom as they sprinted towards the secondary hatch. The ship's walls seemed to close in on them, the weight of the Zeril warship's massive structure pressing down. As they moved, they encountered more Zeril soldiers, heavily armored and wielding energy rifles that could tear through metal like paper. The team responded with precision, each shot landing with deadly accuracy. But the aliens were relentless, and they knew that time was not on Earth's side. Carter glanced at the countdown clock again. Just 20 minutes left. The pressure was mounting, but she kept her calm. Every human soldier was relying on her leadership to get them through this nightmare. "Keep moving, don't stop," she ordered. They rounded a corner, and the secondary hatch came into view. A wave of relief washed over Carter as she saw the door in sight, but it was short-lived. The hatch was already guarded, 3 heavily armed Zeril soldiers stood before it, their weapons ready. The team halted for a split second, the tension building in the air. Carter raised her hand, signaling her team to hold fire. "We need a plan," Carter muttered, thinking fast. The clock was ticking, and they were outnumbered. But then, she remembered something, an idea sparked by necessity. "Hayes, can you rig a flashbang?" Hayes nodded without missing a beat. "On it." In a matter of seconds, Hayes had prepared a flashbang from the supplies on his belt. With a quick nod, he tossed it around the corner. The moment the grenade exploded, a blinding flash of light filled the hallway, followed by a deafening crack. The Zeril soldiers shrieked in pain as they staggered back, temporarily blinded. "Now!" Carter shouted, and the team stormed forward. With precision and speed, the humans took down the disoriented Zeril guards. The fight was over in seconds, the alien soldiers falling without the chance to retaliate. The hatch was now theirs. "We're clear!" Carter yelled, rushing to the control panel and overriding the door's security system. The hatch slid open with a loud hiss, revealing the dark expanse of the hangar bay beyond. Their escape was almost within reach, but there was still one final obstacle. As they crossed into the hangar, they saw their ship, the Argonaut, docked and waiting. The relief was brief. Zeril reinforcements were already pouring into the hangar. Several enemy ships were in the process of launching, and the Argonaut was the primary target. "We've got company," Carter shouted as she drew her weapon and fired at the incoming aliens. The team moved with precision, cutting down the Zeril soldiers one by one as they approached the ship. Carter's eyes locked onto the Argonaut. It was only a few meters away, but the space between them was filling with enemy fire. "Get to the ship!" Carter yelled, her voice a mixture of command and urgency. The team ran, firing as they went, their boots pounding on the metallic floor of the hangar. Just as they reached the Argonaut, a blast from a Zeril energy cannon hit the wall beside them, sending debris flying. The explosion knocked Sergeant Hayes off his feet, but he quickly regained his composure, climbing back up and continuing to move toward the ship. "Inside, now!" Carter shouted. The team boarded the ship in record time, weapons still raised, adrenaline pumping. As the last soldier entered, Carter hit the launch sequence. The ship's engines roared to life, and the Argonaut shot forward, narrowly avoiding a barrage of incoming enemy fire. As they rocketed away from the Zeril warship, the ship's hull shook from the blast of a nearby explosion. The countdown clock ticked down to the final seconds. "We're clear," Carter said, breathing a sigh of relief, but her voice was steady. "Let's get back to Earth." But even as they made their escape, Carter couldn't shake the feeling that this battle was far from over. The destruction of the Zeril warship was only the beginning. The real fight was yet to come, and the rise of Earth's warriors had only just begun. The Argonaut cruised through the vastness of space, its engines roaring as the team sped toward Earth's coordinates. But despite the adrenaline rush of their narrow escape, Colonel Sarah Carter's mind was focused on the bigger picture. The destruction of the Zeril warship had given humanity a crucial advantage, but it was only one battle in an increasingly brutal war. And the enemy wasn't likely to forgive such a blow. As the crew sat in silence, the weight of their success began to sink in. They had made it out alive, and the Zeril warship was a pile of rubble. But the question lingered: how much longer could Earth's resistance hold against an alien armada that was seemingly invincible? The ship's communications system suddenly crackled to life, breaking the tense silence in the cockpit. A message from Earth's command center, routed through the Human Alliance fleet's encrypted channels. "Carter, this is Admiral Jenkins. I need you back here, now. The tide is about to turn." Her heart raced at the urgency in his voice. There was no time to waste. Earth's survival had always seemed uncertain, but now it seemed the threat was escalating faster than anyone had anticipated. "Understood, Admiral." "We're on our way," Carter replied, cutting the transmission. As the Argonaut sped toward the fleet's rallying point, the team gathered in the mission briefing room to plan their next move. The atmosphere was tense. Victory had been sweet, but it was short-lived. Earth had dealt a heavy blow to the Zeril, but Carter knew they were not about to sit back and let humanity rebuild without a fight. "We've got to capitalize on this victory," Carter said as she addressed her squad. "This could be our chance to turn the tide, but it won't be easy. The Zeril will regroup, and when they do, they'll come at us harder than before." Lieutenant Ava Martinez, the team's intelligence officer, spoke up. "We've intercepted transmissions from the Zeril High Command. They're already planning a counterstrike, one that could wipe out what's left of our fleet if we're not careful. We need to hit them first." Carter's brow furrowed. "How much time do we have?" Martinez's fingers danced over the holomap. "Maybe a few days at best. The Zeril are organizing an attack fleet at their closest staging point. We can intercept them if we move fast enough." The mission was clear: the resistance needed to strike first, and strike hard. The Argonaut had just pulled off a miracle, but the upcoming battle would require even more. Every human on Earth, from soldier to civilian, had a role to play in this war. But Carter knew one thing for sure: they couldn't win if they didn't act decisively. The team suited up and prepared for the mission. The Argonaut was the spearhead of humanity's attack. Its advanced technology and adaptability made it the perfect ship for a daring assault on the Zeral's counterstrike fleet. The odds were slim, but if they succeeded, they would shake the foundation of the Zeral Empire to its core. As the Argonaut broke through the atmosphere and emerged into the cold void of space, the team was ready. The mission was about to unfold, and the outcome would shape the future of humanity. "We know what's at stake," Carter said to her team, her voice calm but resolute. "This is not just about survival anymore. It's about sending a message to the Zeral. We may be small, but we're not weak. And we will fight until our last breath." The team responded with nods of affirmation. Their bond had been forged in the fires of war, and now they stood together, ready to face whatever the enemy could throw at them. The stars ahead seemed to mock them, distant, cold, and uncaring. But the human spirit was different. It was warm, alive, and unyielding. The Argonaut surged forward, cutting through the void with a new sense of purpose. The upcoming battle would be brutal, but they had already proven that humanity could rise when pushed to its limits. And they were going to prove it again. The countdown had begun. The Argonaut and the rest of the human fleet reached the staging area of the Zeral Armada within a matter of hours. The enemy was waiting, but they were unprepared for the ferocity and cunning of Earth's forces. Carter's team had planned every detail of the attack down to the last maneuver, but even so, they couldn't afford a single mistake. The fleet of Zeral warships loomed ahead, their dark forms dotting the vastness of space like predators waiting to strike. But the resistance was not intimidated. In fact, they had been planning this very moment for weeks. The destruction of the Zeral warship had given them the perfect opening. "Target locked," Lieutenant Martinez reported, her voice steady but tinged with anticipation. "We're in position, Colonel." Carter nodded. "Prepare to engage." In that moment, all doubts vanished. Earth's warriors had already defied the odds. Now, they would do it again. The Argonaut rumbled as its engines powered up, and the other ships in the Human Alliance fleet followed suit. The stars outside flickered as the fleet moved into position, each ship a testament to humanity's resilience and innovation. The Zeral Armada loomed ahead, a terrifying force of sheer might, yet the humans were ready. The upcoming battle would be their defining moment, one that would echo through the galaxy for years to come. Carter stood at the helm, eyes fixed on the massive fleet of Zeral ships. Her pulse quickened, but her mind remained calm. Every second counted now. She couldn't afford to hesitate. Humanity's future rested on the success of this operation. "Launch fighters," Carter ordered. The fleet's fleet of smaller attack ships, piloted by Earth's bravest, would spearhead the assault. Their goal was to punch a hole in the Zeral defenses, giving the larger capital ships a chance to maneuver into range. The fighters shot forward in a blaze of light, their weapons fired in rapid succession. For a brief moment, it felt like time slowed down. The hum of the Argonaut's weapon systems filled Carter's ears, while the flashes of energy blasts and explosions lit up the vastness of space. It was chaos, but it was the kind of chaos humanity had learned to thrive in. The first salvo from the Zeral came quickly, missiles and energy beams tearing through space, heading straight for the advancing humans. But the Argonaut was ready. Carter's fingers danced over the controls, and with a flick of her wrist, the ship performed a swift evasive maneuver. The enemy's blasts whizzed by, narrowly missing the hull. "Close one," shouted Lieutenant Carter, the fighter pilot at the controls of the Argonaut. "We can't keep dodging like this forever," Carter muttered under her breath. She glanced at the starboard side of the enemy fleet. There, she saw a gap forming between two larger Zeral ships. It was a window of opportunity, but it would take all of their skill and coordination to exploit it. "Martinez, I need your analysis," Carter ordered. "Where's our opening?" Martinez's fingers flew over the holomap as she scanned the enemy fleet. "There's a blind spot near their central flagship. If we can break through their outer defenses, we can hit the flagship and cause a chain reaction." Carter nodded, the plan forming quickly in her mind. Get the fleet in position. We're going for the flagship. The humans began to push forward, concentrating their firepower on the Zeral's outer defenses. The Argonaut took the lead, its cannons unleashing a hail of energy blasts, hammering the enemy ships and forcing them to scatter. Behind them, the fighter squadron pressed on, working in perfect sync to create a path through the defensive line. The Zeral fleet retaliated with overwhelming firepower, but the human fighters, nimble and fast, expertly evaded the shots. The Argonaut's crew worked in flawless harmony, each movement calculated and purposeful. Yet, as the battle wore on, the human forces began to feel the strain. The Zeral's warships were massive and well-armored, and every hit took its toll. "We've got incoming!" Lieutenant Hayes, the weapons officer, shouted as a large Zeral ship came into view, its weapons powered up and ready to fire. "Brace for impact," Carter commanded. She gritted her teeth, knowing the ship's armor would be tested to its limits. The blast struck, sending a violent jolt through the Argonaut. The entire ship shook, and the lights flickered for a moment. "We're holding steady, Colonel," shouted the chief engineer, who had been monitoring the ship's systems. "We can take more hits, but not for long." Carter's mind raced as the countdown clock on the holomap began ticking down. They had minutes before the Zeral flagship could engage in a final assault, and they were dangerously close to the heart of the enemy formation. "We need to take that flagship down, now," Carter muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "Martinez, coordinate the fleet." "I'm going in." She slammed her fist on the controls, and the Argonaut surged forward, weaving in and out of the enemy fire. The humans' skill and determination were unmatched, but it was a battle of attrition. The enemy ships were massive, and the longer the fight dragged on, the harder it became to hold the line. "Captain, we're almost there," Lieutenant Hayes shouted, his voice strained with the effort of maintaining fire on the enemy. "They're opening fire on us, but we're in range." "Target the flagship's core," Carter commanded. "We hit them there, and we take down their entire fleet. All firepower on my mark." The Argonaut barreled toward the Zeral flagship, dodging incoming fire and returning it in kind. As they neared the massive ship, Carter's heart pounded in her chest. The fate of Earth was hanging in the balance, and only one thing mattered: they had to succeed. "Mark!" Carter shouted, her voice filled with authority. The entire fleet released a concentrated barrage of missiles and energy blasts, aimed directly at the flagship's vulnerable core. It was a precise, desperate strike, the only chance humanity had to end this battle once and for all. The explosion was massive. A brilliant flash of light erupted in the heart of the Zeral flagship, the shockwave rippling through space. The sheer force of the blast sent shockwaves through the Argonaut, shaking it to its core. "Direct hit," shouted Martinez, her voice filled with awe. "The flagship is going down." The Zeral fleet reeled in shock, the once imposing Armada faltering as their central command vessel crumbled. The remaining Zeral ships began to break formation, some retreating, others spiraling into chaos. Victory was within humanity's grasp. "We've done it!" Carter shouted, unable to hide the relief in her voice. But as the battle continued to unfold around them, she knew this was only the beginning. The war against the Zeral Empire was far from over, but Earth had made a statement. They had defied the odds and proven to the galaxy that humanity could, and would, fight to the very end. And the galaxy would never be the same again. The quiet hum of the Argonaut's engines filled the bridge as the crew surveyed the aftermath of the battle. The once menacing Zeral Armada had been reduced to smoldering wreckage, scattered across the vastness of space like broken toys. Humanity's warriors had won, but victory had come at a steep price. "Status report," Carter commanded, her voice steady despite the toll the battle had taken on her. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders as the team worked to assess the damage. "Minimal casualties on our end, Colonel," Lieutenant Hayes reported. "We lost a few fighters, but nothing we can't recover from. The Argonaut took some hits, but we're holding together." Carter exhaled in relief. The ship had withstood the fiercest barrage the Zeril could throw at them, and now it was time to focus on the long road ahead. This battle was a turning point, but the war was far from over. Martinez, who had been glued to the data streams, suddenly looked up. "Colonel, we've got a new message from Earth's command center. They want to speak to you." Carter nodded. "Put them through." The hologram flickered to life, and Admiral Jenkins appeared on the screen. He was a stern-looking man, his face haggard with the stress of the war, but there was a glimmer of something else in his eyes: hope. "Carter, you did it. You've broken their back," Jenkins said, his voice full of pride. "We've had reports from across the solar system, Earth, Mars, even the outer colonies. The Zeril are retreating, and we're beginning to reclaim lost territory. Your victory has given humanity the leverage we desperately needed." Carter's chest swelled with pride. She had led a small team of soldiers and pilots to defeat one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy, and the ripple effect was already being felt across the human worlds. "We couldn't have done it without the whole fleet, Admiral," Carter replied, humility in her voice. "This was a team effort. Earth's people stood together." Jenkins nodded. "That's why we're reaching out to you. You've proven that humanity can rise to any challenge, no matter the odds. We need your leadership now more than ever. The war isn't over, but this is our chance to finally push back. We want you to head the next phase of the operation." Carter's eyes narrowed, her mind racing. This was the moment she had been preparing for. The battle had ended, but the real fight was just beginning. They needed to consolidate their victories, shore up their defenses, and prepare for the Zeril to retaliate with everything they had. "I'll do whatever it takes to win this war, Admiral," she said, her voice firm. "We know you will, Carter. But know this, your victory has inspired millions of humans across the galaxy. You've made them believe in something bigger than themselves. In unity. In victory. And in our future." As the message ended, Carter turned to her crew, who were gathered around, awaiting her orders. They had given everything for this moment, and now the true work began. The battle for Earth's survival had been won, but the war for the future of humanity was far from over. "We've earned a moment of rest, but we can't afford to stop," Carter said, her tone unwavering. "The Zeril might be retreating, but they won't give up. We need to rebuild, rearm, and get ready for the next fight." Lieutenant Martinez stepped forward. "We've got intel on the Zeril's next move. It won't be long before they regroup and launch another offensive. But this time, we'll be ready." "Good," Carter replied, a fierce determination in her eyes. "We've shown them what we're capable of, and now we're going to finish this. Earth's warriors have only just begun to fight." As the Argonauts set course for the next battle, Carter felt a deep sense of resolve. Humanity had taken its first steps toward reclaiming its place among the stars. And though the war was far from over, the message was clear: Earth's warriors were not to be underestimated. They had defied the odds, and they would continue to rise, stronger with each victory. The universe had learned a valuable lesson today: never underestimate humanity's will to survive. And for the first time in a long time, Earth's future looked brighter than ever before.